Hey guys, it's Skybird, and I wanted to chat with you for a handful of minutes to give you a bit of a building tip. Probably the best that I can give you, and it allows you to do things like this with a little bit of time. Now, I obviously build a lot of Rahi like these. I know that that's not the favorite thing of the fan base, but it is mine, and I like to assume that I'm pretty good at it, all things considered. But I wouldn't be where I am today without this building tip. And what is it? What is it? No, honestly, it is one thing in specific, kind of two. A, setting high expectations for yourself, setting any expectations for yourself, really, when you're first trying to sort of hone your skills, because that's what building is, a skill, can sort of set yourself up for failure, depending on how you approach a set. When I tried to build as a kid, I would often approach building with the idea that I could never achieve what LEGO achieved. They had a team, they had near infinite parts at their disposal, so much time amongst them to design the Rahi that I knew and loved back in the early 2000s. I could never do any of that, so I often didn't start, which is one big part of honing your skills. You cannot gain a skill if you never start trying to gain it in the first place. And that was my problem. A lot of the time I spent growing up, I spent admiring what I saw come out of LEGO, especially those early Rahi, but I myself never truly tried to actually make something like them. And here's the thing, when you look back at the Rahi, two things I want you to know. A, they're not perfect, they're not supposed to be, but I absolutely believed they were. And B, they're not as complicated or as daunting as they first appear. Many of the functions that the Rahi have are really intuitive, save for basically one. The Kanera and Miwaka set, that function is pretty complicated, but once you understand how it works, you can sort of apply it to your own build. And in fact, I have. I've turned the little mouth mechanism from that set into its own complete grasshopper build, which was great. Speaking of grasshoppers, I've got a grasshopper build to show you here in a moment. That said, though, talking about building techniques, the next one that I want to go over is outside of just starting. Get yourself a set, a Bionicle set, a Lego set, whatever the case may be, just one set, or maybe two. You know, you can build a parts pool if you want to, but challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to take that set apart and build something new with it. Sometimes you have to get a bit abstract, like the Toamata, for example. That body is a very clunky shape. In fact, many of the pieces that came out of those sets are very specialized, so they're kind of hard to reuse in your own ways, but you can do it. I really prefer something that's got more of a Technic base to it, like the Rahi, or probably my personal favorite to work with, the Borak Va, because they're readily available parts. You can get many of them fairly cheaply. Don't go out there and buy them used unless you buy them open used, because they're pretty affordable then. But I say that because that's actually kind of what started my building career, in a way, was the Borak Va. And I've talked about this several times on the channel, but just very quickly to state, the Borak Va are some of my favorite early builds from Bionicle for a handful of reasons. A, they're very cute, if you don't know that already. But B, they also come with a handful of alternate models kind of ready to go. Obviously, you have the Kaita, you get to combine them together, but you also have 4 Rahi that were designed by LEGO that you can then build. And so I set about doing a challenge where I would build all of the other permutations, all of the other possible combinations of these 6 Borak Va to make Rahi to fill in all of the gaps. If you do the math, you can do a total of 15 Rahi with a combination of any 2 Borak Va. LEGO already had done 4, so I had 11 to go, and I did. The first Rahi I built was kind of terrible, but it was fine. It was passable for sure. And then the second one got a little better. The third one got better than that. The fourth one, so on and so forth. And as I continued to build, as I continued to work with these parts, what it forced me to do was it forced me to confront these barriers that I had placed in my own mind that I didn't ever confront before. I knew they were there, but I'd never identified them, never looked at them long enough to tell you what they were. And what they were just a couple of things. I used to think that all Rahi needed to have functions, but why? because the original Rahi from 2001 did? Sure, okay, they do, but not every Rahi that LEGO's made has functions. The Master Builder set, several of the Rahi in there don't have functions at all. That's okay. Second, I would often think that Rahi could only be built with one color and then neutrals. Again, I was reflecting back on these Rahi from 2001, many of which only used one primary color, though some would have a splash of a secondary color in there as well. And again, it never held true. Many Rahi from later years, even from 2001, had multiple colors because A, they were combinations of other things, and I could do that too. And 3, I often thought that parts when building needed to be from the era of the style I was trying to replicate. This build right here is made only using 2001 pieces, whereas this build is not at all, but it looks kind of classic in its design, and again, I'll come back to that in a moment. Going back to this though, and again, this is one that I've shown off on the channel in the past. This is the Kuma, and this is an alternate model, but it's an alternate model of just one build, the Moaka. If you own the Moaka and Kane-Ra set, you only need one of them to make this. I chose the yellow because I like it more, and also it gives you the ears for like a little cat ear, whatever. It's got a function, it's cute. Again, I've went over it in the past before. It's a lovely little build, but it didn't need any of those things. This was part of the challenge that I had set out for myself, building an alternate model from one Rahi from each of the Rahi from 2001. It was also a fun challenge. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself. The point of this video. Building tips often come from the things that you've learned. You can absolutely learn tips from other people, but if you don't apply your skills, A, you will never hone your skills, and B, you will never really absorb the things you learn, because you can learn building tips from others, but if you never come across a point where you need those building techniques, you'll forget them. However, if you discover them yourself, A, you're more prone to remember them because it's kind of a dopamine hit, honestly, to discover a new connection, but also because you often find that connection because you need it for something, right? And so not only do you have a new connection, but you've solved a problem. It gives you 2 different methods, modes, avenues, whatever, to actually approach remembering these techniques that you find. And as you continue to build, you build up those techniques, you build up your design language. And I think that's my strength, honestly, is I know exactly what I want to build now. I have a good understanding about how to approach it. And I like to think many of the times, though not every time, I want to make that very clear, I come up with something that I'm very proud of and very proud to show off. That's not to say that I'm perfect, though. There are many things that I've created that I'm not happy with, that go nowhere. Sometimes I have an idea for a function, and in my head, it seems like it's going to work great. I get it down in parts, and it does not work the way I wanted it to at all. Sometimes that's fun because you learn something new, or you run into a completely different thing you didn't expect and come up with a completely different build. That's fun too. But sometimes you try to explore these builds, you come up with nothing, you've wasted, I guess, that time, but have you really? No, I don't think so. You've learned. And that's important. You can only get better through experience. You can only get better through learning, and you can only learn through trying, right? You can only begin at the beginning, whatever, insert Game Changers opening here. Point being, it's a lot of fun to go out of your comfort zone, to get out of your own way, to not be your own obstacle, your own worst enemy. Just get out there, pick up some parts, and build. There's no right answer. Nothing that you build is wrong. Someone might critique what you build, and that's perfectly okay. And sometimes you should actually seek out criticism as well, because it can help you improve. It doesn't mean that the criticisms everybody else gives you are criticisms you have to take, because not everybody knows the idea that was in your head when you started building the thing that you started building. But at the very least, it gives you a jumping off point, let's say. So that's pretty much it for this one. Hopefully I've inspired you at least a little bit in this video. If you guys do enjoy this content, be sure to subscribe. It helps the channel out tremendously. And speaking of the little grasshopper guy here as well, if you are more interested in parts like this and my reviews on knockoff sets in general, you can check out the Patreon, linked down in the description below, because that is how I get these knockoff sets in the first place to review on the channel. And yeah, that's basically it. I hope you have a great day. Take care.